Hello and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates. Welcome back. Recently, we have been talking about what? We've been talking about, for example, from 0 to 1 and from 1 to many. We've been talking about making financial goals and what happens when you make a specific financial goal. And we've been talking about endeavor forces. And all of these different themes are within the construct of an idea where we discuss output, input, scenarios, and choice. Is there a story that we can tell that can help us to understand this idea? And I think there is. In my digital course, the very first thing that you see when you open up the course, after the introduction and after some of the first steps, just to get to know the course, I begin the course with two images. One is an image of Lisa Simpson, and I think that Lisa Simpson is a great example of a CEO. But the other example is Pinky and the Brain. If you're familiar with Pinky and the Brain, then you know that these are two laboratory mice. And every night after the scientists go home, Pinky and the Brain, they open up their cage and they start to run around the laboratory. And Brain always asks the same question. And he says, are you ready to do, some great adventure, something interesting? Are you ready to do the thing which I want to do? And Pinky says, what is that thing which you want to do? And Brain always says, I want to take over the world. And it's an interesting cartoon because in every single episode, you have Brain. And in the methodology that I teach, the brain represents coaching and analyst. So coaching is toward the staff. How do we teach the staff and train the staff and help the staff? And then analysis, meaning how do we understand what they are doing, their output, and the systems and performance. So that's Brain. Brain, he comes up with these crazy plans. And then Pinky, it's interesting because Pinky has these pink hands. So the brain actually has a gigantic head, and then Pinky has these pink hands, and the pink hands represent the practical steps that you have to do in order to get the job done. And the interesting thing about the cartoon is that sometimes the brain has this insanely gigantic plan, and it doesn't always get the job done. And sometimes you have to solve the problem with somebody that has more practical solutions. So what does this have to do with the things that we've been talking about recently? I think that the main idea, whenever I have talked to a student for a long time, when I'm working with a student for a longer period of time, I notice that there's basically two paths that people go in. There's one path where the people are just more interested in having someone to talk to and share their thoughts and have a conversation with. But in general, they're very proactive, but they just like to have someone to talk to. The other kind of student that I teach is somebody who every week they have something specific that they're trying to solve. And so every time I see them, I'm always asking them about this crazy word called potential. And really, when it all comes down to it, that's the issue that we're all talking about. It's potential. What is potential? Potential is the opportunity to move from A to B. Potential, it's when you have B. Well, what is B? So B is some kind of vision, something that you can see in the future, something that you want to obtain. And in the book, Create Crucial Insight, Thomas Buchholz, he expresses vision very simply in the opening pages of the book. He says, to thrive or not to thrive, that is the question. And really, that is the question, whether you are thriving or merely surviving. And all different people, all different cultures, companies, and nations, they are all developing some type of personal ideology, some kind of way of viewing the world. And whatever that worldview is, it has to incorporate some level of successfulness. Is it that they want to thrive, or is it that they are merely surviving? And you find that sometimes it's difficult to pass on how to run people and processes, but also the real world experience that causes someone to really, really push. Because when we talk about potential, we're generally talking about three things. One is not just the genetics, this idea where we are managing interactions, we're guiding interactions, and that means access to human capital. And it's an understanding of how humans work together and how to put them into groups in order to achieve some type of end. Second, it's motivation. And motivation, it's not just for the team leader, the CEO, the person who really wants something, but it's also those individuals who are working together in the team. That's really the question about survive or thrive, is what do you want and how badly do you want it? And if you want something so badly that you're willing to sacrifice everything for it, and you're willing to focus on it, and you're willing to work at it and try to figure out how to succeed, then you have that fire, that power, that force, and especially you have the ability to continue with grit. It means that even when you fail, that you're going to continue to try again and try again and try again. And that's really what it comes down to. It's who is going to survive the longest. Often the battle is who can hold on to their strength and determination the longest. And once somebody lets go of that strength or determination, or if they run out of strength, or if they lose their determination, that's when the other side wins. So it's not actually that you're not exactly overpowering the other person. You're maintaining your position until the other person is unable to maintain their position. And sometimes that means maintaining your position for an awfully long time. And that's when it comes to the third element. So the third element is about resources. Like I mentioned, human resources, the interactions that we have, that's the primary resource that we have to draw on. And then the motivation that's within them, I mean, maybe that's also some kind of resource, the purposes that they are trying to work toward. But then also, like, what access do you have to infrastructure, and what access do you have to time and money and skill, and what access do you have to organizations and efforts, and what is it that's in your surrounding area that you can use in order to organize it and to try to get some kind of progress toward your vision. All right, so that brings us back to this thing about potential, A to B. So A is where we are right now, and B is where we would like to go. And so if you want something that you can Google and think about, just Google this idea called force field analysis. Force field analysis, it has a very interesting idea where it says that there's something called desired state. And when you try to work toward the desired state, what you're going to notice is that there are some resisting forces. And that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this idea of endeavor forces. See, you have to set an actual desired state before you can understand what those resisting forces are. And until you create a desired state, you don't actually have driving forces. So set a goal, create a vision, and let's develop some potential so that we can thrive, not merely survive.